Jesus had just gotten off the boat in a new place for him. And there is a road, and on the other side of the road is a cemetery, a graveyard. And there in that cemetery was a young man who had chose to live there because he had a lifetime of issues. He had a mob of issues that had just caused him to be afraid and had caused everybody to be afraid of him. And here now, for the first time, he encounters Jesus. And when he encountered Jesus, Jesus blesses his life, and it changes his life. And I will invite you to go and to read the first part of the book of Mark to get that whole story. But the part of the story I want you to catch the vision of was after Jesus and this man encounter each other and kind of collided with each other, Jesus blessed this man. He'd never been blessed. He don't know how to handle being blessed. But here he is now. He's blessed. And what do I do with the blessing? So he sits alongside the road. He had been changed both on the inside and the outside. He's a new person, but he doesn't know what to do with his blessing. Finally, Jesus decided that it's time for him to move further down the road. And Jesus moves further down the road, and now this young man, newly blessed, have to decide, what do I do with my blessing? Do I just stay here alongside the road and wait for another blessing? Or do I follow Jesus? And he chose to follow Jesus. And he only followed Jesus for a short time when Jesus turns around to him and sends him on a mission to a place of 10 cities, the place where he grew up, to tell him to go and to set others free, to tell them the good news of the Christ, tell him the good news of setting the captives free. And so this young man who at one time lived in a cemetery, scared to death, everybody's scared of him, is now on a mission for Jesus. He's now called to go and to set the captives free. I share this story with you because in a way that's where we are at. Every one of us gets blessed by God. In some way, when we encounter Jesus Christ, he blesses us. Now the thing is, after we've been blessed by Jesus, sometimes we don't know what to do. Many of us just sit alongside of the road waiting for another blessing, waiting for something else to happen. And for those of us who just sat alongside of the road, we missed out on the joy of the real gospel. We missed out on the joy of the adventure. So when we've been blessed, we have to decide, do I sit alongside of the road or do I have to do something new and I follow Jesus? And if you choose to follow Jesus further down the road, your life of adventure just begins, because there will come a time when Jesus, the Master, will turn to you and send you to become a blessing to others. He'll put you on the mission of Christ. He'll send you to set the captive free. In my life, I've encountered a lot of people who have encountered Jesus. A lot of people who, much like this man, they have had a mob of issues in their lives. Issues that have caused them not to really be accepted by others. And I want to bear to you the good news of living witnesses of people much like this man who encountered Jesus. Their life is blessed, and they're left with the choice about, do I sit by the side of the road or do I move further down the road? And where I come from, I get to experience seeing people encounter Christ and be blessed always. And I want to share with you a witness of some lives who have decided not to sit alongside the road once they've been blessed, but to move further down the road. Nancy, a young gal who was sexually abused as a child. And she became her self-esteem was bad, and she became a victim of a school, of an education system that only wants to teach those who are easy to educate. So by the time she was in 7th grade, she had been left behind. And so now, with only a 7th grade education, she has to go out and face the world all alone with nothing but a lifetime of issues. And the lifetime of issues are added to, and they get bigger and they get more and more. And she finds herself finally a single mother with 3 children, working in the adult entertainment industry, trying to make a living. Her self-esteem is gone. She has addictions. She is just a mess. She has a gang full of issues in her own life. Then she encounters Jesus. A friend invites her to come to church. So she comes to this church, this Community of Christ congregation, and she walks in. And for her very first time, she walks into church. And there she's around a bunch of people who accepts her and loves her and begins immediately to restore her dignity, and she encounters Jesus. Jesus Christ blesses her. And Nancy has that choice. Do I sit alongside the road or do I follow Jesus further down the road? And on her first Sunday at church, she makes the decision to follow Jesus further down the road. And a week later, she is baptized and confirmed part of the community of Christ. But it doesn't stop there for her, because Jesus put her on a mission. Now she has planted a cell church in her very home where dozens of people meet every week to encounter Christ. She has a gift of being an artist. She took her gift that once she thought was good for nothing, and now she do murals and banners, and she draws art for the church. But the thing most about Nancy is, Nancy has now sensed a call to help other mothers who are single, to help other mothers who are struggling, who are shoplifting, who are in the adult sex industry trying to make a living. And she has now took on the mission of helping them. And we encounter many of them. She helps them by knowing what they are. And Nancy haven't only stopped there. Nancy is now a mother, and she is also became the wife of one of our pastors. And for Nancy, sitting alongside the road after being blessed wasn't enough. She had to follow Jesus, and Jesus put her on mission. I know another man by the name of John. John was born into a lifestyle where his dad ran a liquor house. And by the time John was 10 years old, he had already learned to drink and smoke and use drugs and to experience sex. He found his life being homeless. He found his life in and out of jail. He found his life full of violence. One time he even set his very own brother on fire. Then at the age of 60, somebody, a child, invites him to come to church. And he comes to the community of Christ for the first time. And he walks in there because he knows that this has been a church that had buses and vans, and they bring people to church, and he wanted to see what it was. And so he walks in. And when he walks in, he encounters Jesus. He encountered Jesus. He's blessed. And he's led, do I sit by the side of the road, or do I go further down the road? And for John, he chose to go further down the road. Now, 6 years later, John, who has no alcohol addictions, John, who is no longer homeless, John is now a priest in the community of Christ. John has now planted his own cell group where every Monday more than 30 people gather together to encounter Jesus. And John had become a missionary to the homeless. Every day, John is out on the street looking for folks who has experienced life the way he used to, with issues. And here John is, understanding their pain, inviting them to the community of Christ. Every Sunday, here comes John with a new person to encounter God. And John decided, even at the age of 60, when he was blessed by God, not to just sit alongside the road, he decided to follow Jesus further down the road. And Jesus called John to become a missionary to the homeless. And that's what he had done. And finally, guys, I want to tell you about a young lady named Missy. Missy, also a victim of sexual abuse. Missy, who also saw her brother die due to abuse when she was only 13 years old. And she wanted to run away from that thing, so she got herself involved in a lifestyle, where she ended up being married 3 times and having 4 small children, all under the age of 7. And Missy's lifestyle became one of drinking and one of drugs and all kinds of stuff. And the worst day of her life happened one day. She falls asleep, passes out on her couch with a cigarette. It sets the couch on fire, and her 4 children are burnt to death. And Missy feels that for the next 11 years of her life, that what she's supposed to do is punish herself, to be guilty, to feel awful, to pay for her mistakes. And so for 11 years of her life, she got herself deeper and deeper and deeper into addiction. Then a friend, a neighbor, invites her to come to the community of Christ. So she comes, expecting to be told how guilty she was and how big of a sinner she was. But instead, she found a group of people who understood pain, who understood what it's like to not fit in. And now, she was left with the choice after being blessed. Do I sit alongside the road waiting on another blessing? Do I sit alongside the road thinking about my past? Or do I follow Jesus further down the road? And she chose to follow Jesus further down the road. And when she did, here Jesus put her on mission. He put her on mission. Now, she's a cell church planter, having church every week in her own apartment. Plus, she had decided to go to college and to do something about her life. And she had become a registered nurse. And now, not only is she a registered nurse, but she has become a licensed counselor to deal with other parents who have lost their children. And she had decided to follow Jesus and to become someone who helps set the captive free. And that's the good news. The good news is all of us is going to be blessed. God just can't help it. He'll bless us. But when we're blessed by God, we're always left with a choice. What do we do with that blessing? Do we sit alongside the road just waiting for another blessing? Just waiting on something good to happen to us again? Or do we follow Jesus further down the road? And you know, if you follow Jesus further down the road, you know what's going to happen. He's going to put you on mission. And your life of adventure is going to happen because He will send you forth to be on the mission of Christ, to set the captive free, to bear the good news. And for you to be out, not just sitting alongside the road, not even following Jesus, but for you to be out causing others to encounter the Christ, causing others to be set free. That's the good news. In Chattanooga, when we experience good news, we say something like, yo, buddy. We say, yo, buddy, because that's our different way of praising God. If you're following Jesus, and Jesus will put you on mission, and you're on the adventure, and you see how people's lives change every day, you're probably shouting, yo, buddy. May God bless you.